I cannot emphasize it enough. Your contract is one of the most fundamental tools of your business, and you must have a good one. I do not recommend purchasing generic online contracts, but rather talking to an attorney who specializes in this area, someone who really understands our design business, because I can guarantee you that if you have to go to court, a judge is not going to understand all the nuances of our business, right?
Welcome to the Damn Good Designer podcast. Join hosts Cheryl and Liz, the visionary and integrator balancing all the moving parts of a full-service interior design firm. Get ready for a wild ride as they challenge the norms, challenge the industry, and challenge you with damn good truths about what success looks like today. Now your hosts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Damn Good Designer podcast. I'm super excited today. I mean, truly excited to talk to our guests that we have because, you know, I don't do a lot of guests. We have been very selective about the guests that we are talking to because I really want it to be something worthwhile that you really want to tune in for. And I think a lot of times that a lot of the guests on podcasts are just not that interesting. And this one is this is very important topics that we're going to talk about today, and it involves the legal aspects of your business. This is, as you all know, who have been listening to me for a while or coaching with me, that the business part of it is my true love and something I think that doesn't get talked about enough, you know, in general with an educational aspect. So, and some of you know that my dad's a business attorney in California, and so I grew up hearing about contracts all the time. So I'm really excited today to welcome Wendy Estela. She has an interest in working with interior designers and has been doing so for quite some time amongst her other legal machinations and everything that she does. So this is a match made in heaven for today. Let me tell you a little bit about Wendy. She has 25 years in-house and law firm experience. I'm telling you, I've already talked to her though, and she doesn't sound that old. So I don't know if she might have been a prodigy or something, Wendy. I don't know. I've seen pictures of you too, and you don't look like you're old enough to have done all that. She partners with small and medium-sized businesses, many of which are owned by minorities, women, and veterans, which is important. I have a veteran, myself that I'm married to. She works with A-list designers, AD 100 designers, and then just the regular folks like the rest of us too, you know. She's a frequent speaker on a range of topics, including contract negotiations and issues impacting the interior design industry. So this is really very, very kind of her to come on here and talk to us about all of this. You're in Connecticut, right?
Yes, I am. I'm in the Hartford area of Connecticut. And yes.
Okay, great. And also I thought it was kind of a cool little thing, which I'm always looking at people's bios for the things that are kind of interesting. You're the daughter of a Spanish Filipino immigrant and a first generation Polish American mom. I mean, that's an unusual connection there for sure.
It definitely is. And we always say that the three of us, the kids, we're Filipinos. You know, so
Filipinos. I like that.
Yeah, Filipinos. Like and and I thank my dad for a little bit of some good genes there with the youth part. But no, I'm going to be 49 next month, which is crazy. So.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh wow. Well, okay. I've got you beat by a couple of years there. And you were also the first woman on both sides of your family to graduate from college. You know, and I really like that too, coming from a very modest upbringing. My dad and my mom divorced when they were very young, and my dad actually went to law school as an adult. He worked for NCIS for many years and was in Vietnam with naval intelligence, and then he decided he wanted to be an attorney and did all that sort of thing. And my mom's a nurse, but she also went to college late, in her life after having 3 children. So I think that this is kind of a cool, and I'm the firstborn child. So,
oh my gosh. Well, I feel like a nice connection. Yeah, because my dad's a doctor, okay, and I'm a business attorney, but I basically feel like, I can tell you're influenced a lot from your dad, and I am too. And I always think as lawyers, we get bad reputations because most lawyers have no personality, but I always say that I want to bring the bedside manner to the practice of law. And I'm trying to change the way that lawyers are perceived because it's really not great. So I'm doing it, one designer at a time. I spend a lot of time talking to my clients, and, really part of the discussion about lawyers and designers is that, remember, we work for you. So when you hire a lawyer, you engage a lawyer for anything. We work for you. So, it's easy to forget that because of just the way that lawyers act sometimes. So,
I'll tell you, Wendy, we have currently several attorneys as clients, or one actually is segueing out, but we have had numerous clients that have been attorneys, and I've never had an issue. And I don't know if that's, and our contract is beefy. I want to say, I keep saying it's 9 pages. I really need to look, Liz, to see if it's 8 pages or 9 pages, but it's long. And it's also different than the way we do business is different, especially because you're on the East Coast, although I am changing designers one designer at a time too, Wendy, because some of my most successful designers are in New York and in that area and on the East Coast. So I'm changing how they do things from the old days of the cost plus and the things of that nature too. I'm trying to really work with them on different ways, which sort of segues into our topic here, because this, I think, is something that I've been talking about with designers for a while. Liz and I have been going over this quite a bit. And then, Liz, I don't want to forget at the end too to talk about how Wendy can work with other designers in other states, because I think that's important, and we can kind of talk about that at the end if you will remind me of that when we get to that part of it. The biggest dilemma I think many coaching designers, in my experience of coaching designers, has right now, and I think this probably applies to others too, just judging from my Facebook stalking, because I stalk Facebook in groups and things like that, because I want to hear what people are talking about, right? What is the problems, what's happening right now, and all that kind of thing. But it's not, is delays in jobs, okay, and how this affects us, okay? So it's really, I've been in business nonstop, and when I say in business, I mean with a team for 24 years now. I keep saying 23, but now it's got to be 24 by now. And so, yeah, it is 2024, and I started in 2000, really actually a little before then. But I have not been stopping and starting and all that. I've been in business, like nonstop with like outside of my home, that kind of thing, meaning that nothing there's wrong with that. But I mean that we've had a fair amount of revenue come in. And all of this time, we've never really had this problem happen as much as it has really ever since COVID. And even though COVID is over, it still hasn't seemed to be getting away. So a couple of things, bear with me for a minute, because I want to get through this and then let you talk about this so I can get some of these points out. But one thing I did want to know is how you feel about end dates on contracts, because we've always had one, but pay a lot of attention to it, so that if it comes up being near the end, then we have, extensions and of course ways to do that. But I wanted to ask about that. But I think that, clients have to recognize the delays in executing. They're unrelated to our performance, because sometimes there are things that are related to your own performance that's a different subject, but that we have to get new bids, pricing, get up on the job again after potential delays. And really, most importantly, that people don't talk about as much, is keeping the client on the books despite, the pricing may be increasing or the workload capacity being impacted or whatever. And this really applies to any designer, even firms that have 8 employees like we do. It's still, you can't always absorb the bounces, when things happen. I mean, and a solopreneur certainly can't do things. So then let me explain too that we do things a little differently, as that we go under contract for a set expenditure as well as a flat fee. We don't do hourly, except, well, I should say we do hourly when it's called for. But I have a big nut to crack every month, and I have to project income. So for me, I have to be able to look ahead, to be able to see, I have to have money on the books, I have to have money on the books. And so otherwise, how do I know if we just hired somebody and I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, she's starting in August. I mean, do we know that we have the money to pay somebody? Do we have enough business going on? And I think for some high profile designers, maybe this isn't an issue, but I think for the regular folks, which I certainly am, it certainly can be an issue. And so what I want to think about, and our fees are going to be in 5 and 6 figures. We're not talking about, $5,000 here, because if that was the case, we would get the fee all up front anyway. But I'm never going to ask someone for a $50,000 fee up front. I'm just not going to do that. And I think it's great that if people can do it and get away with it, you go, girl. I am like all for you, doing that. But I think especially the way, interest rates at CDs right now for a month are 5%, so to me, getting that fee that might be the course of 6 months or a year or whatever it is asking a lot from most clients themselves in the heartland of the country. Again, some of these markets are, a $200,000 fee is like an everyday thing, but that's not the majority of the people that we are talking to you here. The issue comes up when a designer cannot complete the deliverables due to construction delays or the client delays or whatever. And again, I will say, Wendy, we have a restart fee that if you ghost us for 3 weeks, then you are going to have to, pay us a certain amount. But that doesn't really impact, that's been fine, but that doesn't really impact those jobs where you are losing money because the construction of the home, for example, has gone on for 2 years instead of a year and a half or 3 years or whatever. And your rates may rise too if you're doing a flat fee. Your rates may rise.
Right.
And so the problem is let's say we've never had a problem collecting all of the fee. Okay, never had a problem with that. But we have 2 jobs right now where we've had to extend the contract and extend the expenditure because they're nowhere near being able to do anything. So I think that's part of the issue here is just what to do to protect yourself the best you can with jobs that just go on interminably. Liz, is there anything you want to add to that to make it clear for her what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think you summarized it pretty well. I think the biggest thing for us is just being able to be conscientious of what we sort of anticipate the needs of a project to be, figuring out what that timeline needs to look like, and then figuring out sort of the best way to handle it when things don't go right. I was actually just thinking this morning too that I sent a follow-up to one of the clients who, is kind of relevant in this conversation because they're still really excited about the project. But my fear for them is the more time that passes, it's like we have all of these details, really intricate details to the scope, and it's like you don't want to forget anything. So being able to really make sure that they're as locked on as they need to be too is so important. But it's like, how do you make sure that happens? Because it's a challenging situation to be in when all of the right things don't happen in the right timeline that we anticipate from the get-go.
Right. Exactly. Okay, Wendy.
Yeah, let me ask you a question first.
Yeah. Okay.
When you say you have a set expenditure, because I have an answer for kind of what I'm used to seeing, which is typically like a design fee. This is the most typical structure I've seen recently, a flat design fee plus then it goes into hourly for the next phases of the project. And that's generally what I see. And in that case, using a restart fee or a pause or like a remobilization, whatever you want to call it, that can help during that time. Plus, you would have annual adjustment for hourly rates. So no matter what, however long the project goes on, those rates are getting increased every year. So that, I think, covers most of it. And I also basically say that in no situation is a designer actually responsible for any delays, even in most cases, your own delays, because there's usually a reason for it. But delays by others, delays because of manufacturers, those are never yours. So of course that, is a baseline that has to be in there. But in your situation where you have a set expenditure, are you saying that if you go past your end date, you're projected to go past your end date, you're going to continue to charge them that monthly amount?
No, it's not a monthly amount. It is an expenditure, like, how some people talk about, even what you're talking about, let me address what you were just saying about going into hourly then. Yes, we go into hourly for project management, but that's not procurement. That's not procurement.
Right.
That's not, because that is covered by our margin on what we are making, and have literally a retail store, but that's not, that's, not neither here nor there in that sense. But it is that we also are contracting for a minimum expenditure for each job. Each job is project priced. So it is going to be a relevant minimum expenditure, not a maximum. It's not a budget. It's not any of that. It's just an expenditure, because that is the only way that I can stay in business. I have to be able to say no to the next 3 people that come along. And I think that the reason my Facebook group is called Small Business Think Big is because I think a lot of designers don't think like business owners. And I am by far, a business owner first and foremost, and a designer second. So for us, this has worked for many years, and this is what a platform that I work off of and teach a lot to many designers who've also had great success with it, as opposed to the hourly trap, because I don't trade time for money. I'll let the attorneys do that. And I think some attorneys don't even do that anymore. I mean, there's a little bit of a movement for CPAs and attorneys to change how they bill too.
I also prefer like a flat rate. by myself, because I
based
think
on
it
results.
Improves.
Based
and
on
also
results.
improves relationships too when you know you're not billing by the hour.
100%.
So, you know, but anyway, we'll go all over the place with this. I mean, I think that the key there, it's always going to be a risk you have, is the schedule risk. That's always going to be your risk. It's probably going to be one of the harder ones that you have to manage. So I think that maybe your monthly, you have a monthly maintenance fee in some circumstances, and you tell the client ahead of time that this is going to be part of it. Because again, I don't know a lot about your business, but I'm assuming they're hiring different contractors. They're bringing in tradespeople. They're ultimately responsible for those trades. And usually when a lot of these delays happen, it's because of mismanagement of those trades. So, you know, really, when you look at the risk, that's really the client's risk at this point. So, you know, when I write a contract, I try to look at what's fair. Okay, what's fair to each party? Whose risk is it? In almost every instance, unless you as the designer are the one slowing the project down, every delay is not yours. Okay, so it's either the manufacturer, the client from mismanagement of their contractors or trades, or for being slow making decisions or not getting back to you within X number of days that you specify. So now that's their risk. So if they want to make sure their project's on time, they're going to better manage each one of those risks. And the only way that you can incentivize them to do that is to put a dollar amount in the contract that they're charged if they don't. So you don't want to penalize them. But when you put an actual number in the contract, like, hey, I don't hear for you for a month, $750 on your next invoice. They see that in the contract, they're going to avoid it. Okay, so they understand. And I've listened to your podcast. If you're communicating, you're educating your client, you say to them when you're doing a page turn, okay, which I highly recommend, you're going to say, look, I don't want to have this in here, but I have to. Let me explain to you why. And then you tell the reason why, and you give an illustration by you tell them a story about when that happened to you. And that explains why the number is as big as it is. And then they're going to do everything in their power to make sure they don't get that on their bill. That's really the only way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I call that, this is what I call that, Wendy. I call that the beware of dog sign, you know, or the ADT sign that people steal all over the place, you know, in our little neighborhood because they want to stick it out there because it gives people sort of like, hey, you know, here's the warning language on this and let's not do that. And we do that in various ways too with other things that we do. And I think the restart fee is really good for that. That was one of what you're saying here about doing it. And this is, I guess, getting into the crux of it is if for example our contract we go past the contract at this date is when we're saying we're all agreeing that this should be wrapped up by then. If it's going longer than this, let's just use this as for an example, then we are going to have an addendum to extend the contract. However, there's also going to be this additional fee, you know, that goes into it monthly, like a monthly maintenance, like you said. That was the thing that Liz and I had talked about also, thinking that would be the most fair way to do it. Because I think, and with some clients, truthfully, I'll tell you, Wendy, there have been times, especially in the last couple of years, that we have said, "Oh, thank God, Mr. Smith is taking his own sweet time."
I was just going to say,
you know, you know, and I mean that's the truth. That's the truth. So I try to be fair about that too. That if it really hasn't cost us anything, then I'm not as fussed about it. So I feel like there's sometimes you have contract language that you can enforce or not, should you decide to do it. Right. I guess, you know, or caveats or whatever the case may be. But I think that what we have done with these other two clients, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, on the specifics of it, is that one of them is a woman getting a divorce that she didn't expect. She's very excited about it. We have no anticipation that she's not going to continue on with it. And she's a lovely client. We really enjoy working with her. But it is the truth is, just like with anything, this is why I stopped doing one-on-one coaching too, by the way, because people would not keep their appointments all the time. And then I would be expected to remember who the heck what their business was like 6 months down the road. And I can't, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that without having some kind of fee attached to it, because I still have to go. I'm responsible, and I'm going to go in there and reread your file and look at it the same way that you would have to do also, you know, if you have to touch that file again, right? So, what we have talked about with them is we're extending the contract, and they are going from this, even though it was a flat fee originally, from this point forward, they are hourly on everything, because not because we have delivered everything, because we haven't delivered everything, because we could not. And that's part of it too. I have told my team, you know what? If the client's not ready for creative, too bad. We're still going with it because our payments are predicated on our deliverables.
And it's your project too.
Right, exactly.
And that's the one thing, when you have any kind of flat fee, it's incredibly important to have a section, whether I'm thinking more of the scope of work in a design scope. And this, you could fit this in this exact situation into this, but you should have a section that says what's not included, bold, underline, colon. Okay. And you put exactly what's in there, because that is a trigger to have a change order or amendment or addendum, whatever you call it. So this is what's included in the scope of work, and you could put a time element in there too. So this is all anticipated to be complete by X date, which you have to make sure is a date you can work with yourself.
Right.
Because, you don't, whatever you put in that contract, you have to make sure it's something you can do too.
Right. No, and I agree with that. Plus, we need to, and Liz and I have had several conversations about this. We need to make sure that we are far enough in front of it so that we can extend it. Because I don't want to. So the end date is, it's a I guess a double-edged sword in a way, because it can cut both ways in terms of how it's working. And I don't want the contract to end and then have the minimum expenditure to end, that obligation to end as well. And and generally speaking, I will say that we don't work with clients that we have issues with. We really don't, because of our processes and how we do things and everything else. I think that we eliminate a lot of problems just by good business practices on the very front end. We rarely, and I should knock on wood, because God knows one will come out of the woodwork now that I've put that out in the universe, but we really have had no issues. We've had to fire a client once or twice, but overall it's not been a big, we don't have a big issue. But still, nonetheless, for anybody who is talking about doing that, is making sure that you can live with it, that it's far enough out that it's not going to be a problem, and then keeping up on it. Because I'm not sure, Wendy, what would extent, is a contract, I understand that a contract is once it's legally binding, that whatever that end date is, so things are no longer valid, but is just an email continuing work arbitrarily extend? I wouldn't do it that way. I mean, again, the child of an attorney, so I'm not going to do it that way. But what would constitute a contract keeping going, or do you recommend that people don't do it after all, not having an end date? If you want to extend the end date, you could do it with an email with a 1-page attachment to it. Or you can write it and make them sign that attachment. Or you can just write into your contract that we may extend this date. I mean, you could decide, do you want to be the one to extend it? Do you want to give them the right to extend it? Probably not. You probably want to be the only one that has the right to extend it. You can specify in the contract that this is the method in which you're going to do it. You're going to inform them. Keep it vague. So, maybe you're really busy and you don't get around to sending out that formal amendment. So then, informing them is sufficient over email. I try to make it as easy as possible when drafting these contracts, because I get it. Most designers really don't want to think about the business part. They need to, they try to. But when things get busy, they don't. So, you really have to kind of create something that is foolproof for those times you get really swamped. And in that case, an email is better than nothing. It's just like I say with these contracts. I'm like, listen, if you grab a random contract from the internet, or you put 5 contracts together, you cobble it together from your friend's contracts, it's better than having no contract. So it's a starting point. So again, I realize that's how a lot of people, maybe even the bulk of designers, are working, at least in the first few years. So, again, communicating to your client that you're extending the date, I don't care how you do it, just, make sure it's somehow in writing, because if it's not, then it didn't happen objectively. Right. Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. That's the conversation, because Liz is in charge of that, and I've made a big deal about it now, putting the end date somewhere to where we have that. But I also want to tie it in some way or another, and we haven't quite figured out exactly how we're going to do it, tying it to that if we're not finished by this date in terms of the fees and that sort of thing, and we have to go back and reprice things, which is a big deal these days because prices are changing right and left. that hasn't gone away, that we have to go back. Now, the first round of doing all that, we don't have a procurement fee or anything like that because we cover all of that in the margins from what the expenditure is required to do. And there is language in there about that too. I don't do this. You quote unquote, this is what I saw on Facebook the other day. You have to buy everything from me. Okay, that's really good. Like, I'd like to see a judge, tear that one apart. I mean, it's not something that is it's not specific enough. So in our contract, it's very specific. I don't go into the details of it because that's part of our whole teaching and program. And I don't want people to use certain things without all the things that go before that, Wendy. This is a big deal to me, is that, the way we work is not just a thing that we have decided to do. It is a very successful business model, but it's predicated on many, many, many steps prior to getting there. You know how some people think, oh, well, that's a great idea. I'll just do that. Okay, well, no, that's not the way it works. You don't just have a brilliant idea and say all of a sudden now you're going to go down a different road. It's much more complicated than that. And you have to be able to lay the groundwork and plant the seeds for having this successful relationship with a client, to where when you get to that point, the client fully understands how you're working. They fully understand what the minimum expenditure is and why we have it, and what that applies to, what products they can buy, all of those things. And we've been very successful with that. I mean, we have not had as yet anybody, and we've been doing it for years and years, not understand fully what that is. There was one client over COVID days, but it wasn't because of COVID, that she wanted to get out of it. And she was a realtor, and so she fully understood the contract. She asked us many questions about it, and she fully understood that. And what we allowed her to do, was a small job, and what we allowed her to do is to finish off the rest of the expenditure through our retail arm. So she was able just to come in and, and she bought things for her house, which was fine. She was okay with that. We were okay with that. Everything was fine. Sometimes we let clients, we've had clients that have decided not to build a house and then go buy one. We've let them transfer that to the house that they bought, or something along those lines. So sometimes there's things come up, but I always tell people it's a minimum for a reason. It's not a budget. It's not a maximum, amount of money you're trying to get from somebody. But the point is that we have all of that covered in the contract as well. But I don't want to lose that, because that's a valuable part of our overall compensation to us.
Yeah.
That's how we enter into this agreement. We cannot exist with 8 employees on fees alone. I mean, I'm in a small town in Florida, and I don't even know if you can do that in New York with 8 employees. Maybe some of the top notch, designers can with all of that, but people expect to be paid more these days, overhead.
Yeah, it sounds like you do a great job making it clear to your clients how you work and how you expect to be compensated. And the one piece that you didn't mention, but that is there obviously, is they trust you. And that's not something that you can create on a piece of paper. It's something that happens over time. And with the transparency you have into the way that you operate, they do trust you. So your minimum expenditure, you said you have a lot built into that. The nice thing with that is if you have to at some point in the future, pull some pieces out of that so you can continue to service them, maybe at a different level, and charge hourly or something. If it converts to something, you've explained everything that was wrapped into that fee. So you convert it to a different kind of hybrid something later, just so that you can still make money and keep them as clients and all of that. One other thing I was going to suggest, I wrote it down in my notes here, is that let's say that they can't be number one right now because everything got delayed and now their project is important, but you've moved on because you have to. You can assign that project, you can make it really clear, if we enter into this phase and you call it something else, right? They're almost like a B client, and you can assign different people in your firm to be the ones that kind of babysit that project and manage it. And that should all be reasonable if they haven't followed the timeline on their end. That's one of the risks they're going to have, is that they're going to get somebody other than you. And that should be okay, because at that point they know that that person's working for you, but you can now put your, higher compensation person, on something more important, and then have the B project be staffed by a lower level person.
Yeah,
Not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. It's exactly what ends up happening, because I do have other things to do, and I'm a team approach anyway. I believe in the team, so I am making sure that clients understand up front that we are a team, and the upside is that that they see is you're getting 3 design minds for the price of 1, basically, because that is what is happening. That's on the client facing front of that. But by the same token, it's also allowing me to dance out when I need to. I don't need to be in there for every meeting. I don't need to be handling everything. We all have our specialties within the firm, so everybody does their job, and all the cogs work together to make a great experience for the client. We don't go into all of that, because that's not something that is a client needs to know in terms of the that I am purposely making sure that the client understands that everybody else is working on it, so that I'm not there. I don't make a big deal about that, but that is the truth, that we all have our specialties, and everyone there is going to be working for the benefit of the client anyway. And I think that getting back to this, like what to do specifically on this, I think that, to me, what has made the most sense is to go to hourly. Is basically go to hourly, even though that is not. And that includes even some things that before wouldn't have necessarily been charged, like repricing and things. We don't charge for writing a purchase order. We don't charge for writing an invoice. We still would not do that, because we haven't done it the first time. But we have already researched pricing, and now we have to go back to the well. We have to do certain things that have to do with procurement that also would be hourly. And that's what Liz has explained to these particular clients. And neither one of them had a problem with it either. I mean, there was no... They understood, because they're reasonable people, and because they trust us, like you said, and they get it. I mean, the one client, even paid us in advance on the last time, because he felt bad, because he's been delaying it all, and not even a hammer has swung on this job yet. And so, and it was a big job, so it was a bigger fee. But so going hourly is good, unless we had 6 or 7 clients that all of a sudden were really delayed, because then I'm becoming an hourly firm, and that's not necessarily good. Even if I have been paid already this really nice sizable fee for doing a job, that's money that was in 2022 or 2023. Now we're talking 2025, and the dollars aren't so much. But I do think that of all the things that we have looked at, because I think a monthly extra fee, I know that some, again, I know that you work with a lot of New York designers, and I do think that New York market is, of all the markets that are out there, is kind of has a life unto its own. Although I have worked with many designers that say, oh no, we can't do that here. And then I work with them, and then they're doing exactly what I'm helping them do. So I don't know that that's, and maybe they're in the burbs out there or something, and not Manhattan. But regardless, I think that there are some designers. I've heard another coach mention like a really high monthly retainer. And I'm thinking, dude, you are definitely working with people that are having $300,000 or $400,000 fees. And that's not the majority of us, right? But having that monthly, I don't know. What's your opinion on that in terms of just strictly going by hourly, or having a monthly floor? That's what I was thinking. So that if, this was, again, ideas that we have just posited to each other, Liz and I, and to some of the designers that I coach in certain masterminds where we're just talking about this. But it's like having that was an option, just going strictly to hourly, after certain caveats have occurred, after certain, all these things have happened and transpired to now make it happen this way, that you go to hourly. But that also, there could be a floor that you're going to make $750 a month or $1,000 a month or whatever on that job, regardless. So like it's a minimum, allowing for a minimum 6 hours or 5 hours or something like that. After once we go past this X date, whether it's a contract date or whether it's some other date, once we go past this, then your project becomes hourly, even if all the deliverables have not been done yet, because this is a delay.
I think it's a good model, because if you don't do something like that, this is going to morph into the client that you're trying to get rid of. And I have written more termination breakup letters than I ever have before, where people are getting rid of good clients for various reasons. And I just think that will ultimately be one. You might not want to get rid of that client, but if you're not making any money, you're going to find a way to wind down that project on your terms.
And they're not getting good results. And they're not getting the best end of it, of what you're doing either. And that's kind of what we've explained too, is that, this is, and again, like these particular two clients are lovely people. We enjoy working with them. These are great clients. And I will say both of them seem to understand completely where we were going with this, and why we had to do this. But I think that it does impact your productivity, because when that job is not billing, by the hour, or billing in some new way, if you've already got all the design fee over a certain amount of time, and yet there's still deliverables. Again, we try to create those deliverables, and we tell the client, we are going forward with all of this, whether you're ready to do this part or not. But that you can't do that with everything. I mean, you could go ahead and get design together, say for a primary bedroom or something. I mean, you could go ahead and do all of that, even though the construction part hasn't begun or whatever. Like we do a lot of remodels. So we could do that and at least get a lot of the pre-work done. And then they're just, charge it for the hourly later on. So we try to do that and not let the absence of work lull us, Liz, I'm looking at you and Libby, lull us into this false sense of security because we're so busy with everything else. Like you can't do that.
One other thing you could do is, if you still have deliverables based on your flat fee or set expenditure, whatever you want to characterize it as, you could transition to hourly, but you could create some sort of quote credit that you apply to those hourly fee rates, hourly charges. So you could tell them like, look, we acknowledge we haven't completed this. As a result, we are going to hourly, but we're going to credit you X number of hours. So the hourly billing won't start until we'll track all of our time, but you won't get charged for hourly until we get to hour number, whatever. But that would be one way to kind of ease the concern over the conversion from flat rate to hourly.
Right. I don't know. I like that in terms of some clients, but then I'm thinking you're still losing. Like today's dollar is not what it was in 2022, and I'm thinking that it's like I don't know if it really solves all the issues that go into the fact of having a fee that is not that you're. I mean, I guess in a way you could look at it as unearned, like some of that fee is unearned, but yet you've held the spot for that. You've hired, you've staffed up, you've got your resources all together because you have, this project, let's say, that requires, like, hey, that's really going to push us over on our resources. We're going to have to staff up for this. We're going to have to have our, the bandwidth for it and all of that. And to me, I think a lot of designers, Wendy, don't realize the importance of that. Like, in other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is that even though you may not have technically done all of the work that was there, you still have had that spot. It's like a doctor or somebody charging you a fee for missing an appointment without enough time. Or you doing that? I'm sure that how would that be with your businesses if clients right and left decided to disregard your time and not show up for a meeting? That would be a problem.
Right. Exactly.
So in my mind, this is part of the problem with the design industry in general, is that they're not always, they're focused sometimes on the wrong things, just focused on things that are more silly to me. Like a client picking apart my contract, which actually doesn't happen very often, but you know what? That doesn't bother me at all. You go right ahead. Ask me any question you want. I want to engage with you on this. I want to talk to you about this contract.
And I want you to understand
it fully. Yeah. I don't have any problem.
Yeah, I find a lot of designers will work with clients who say they've worked with a designer before, but those clients are just lying, or they had a different experience, or they worked with somebody in a showroom at like Ethan Allen or West Elm or something.
Right,
so yeah, sure, they've worked with a designer, but not in this context. So you really have to assume that you're working with someone who's never worked with a designer before, and you have to explain your contract, and you have to ask them to ask you questions. So yes. Questions are not a problem. And that first round of like them marking up your contract is not necessarily bad if it's thoughtful. If it's them just being like crossing everything out and just being jerks about it, then maybe that's not your client. But
exactly.
If it looks like they're thoughtful, that's different.
Right. And I think that if people are just asking questions up front in general, that really turns off some people, and then they go to these Facebook forums and run, Forrest, run, and all. And I'm just like, I hate that. I've banned the use of the red flag term in my group. I was like, don't use that word, because I don't like labels, and I particularly don't like that one, because I think a lot of times what you're considering a red flag is really someone that is just a thoughtful business owner, and I'm that way. Like, I don't suffer fools gladly at all, but I am my ideal client. I have discretionary funds to spend. I am happy to pay a premium for somebody doing a job and doing it on time and with results that are what I'm looking for, all of those things. But I also want you to be upfront with me. I want you to be fair with me. I want you to communicate well with me. I want to know if there's a problem. And if there is a problem, I want you to be the first to tell me. I don't want to hear about from Johnny Boy Sub on the job site or something like that. So to me, it's sometimes the focus is on things that are not right, whereas the focus maybe is looking at it like a business, that you have allocated a certain amount of bandwidth for this project, and now it's not happening exactly the way that it should be. And perhaps there is some flex there, of course. There's flexibility in anything. But by the same token, there should be some compensation later after a certain amount of time has passed to get this job going, because it is not your creation, and you still had to pay. My people still want to be paid. They don't really give a shit.
Exactly.
If a client has delayed or not. I mean, my team still expects that paycheck every other Monday, regardless, So I don't know. That's the way I think about it with designers sometimes in their focus in general about it. But I did want to ask you before we get into our damn good truth too. And this has all been really great conversation. I'm sure we could go on with it for a long period of time. And if nothing else, Wendy, if we've gotten people to think about this dilemma so that they're not surprised all of a sudden when hey, it's been a year and the job is still not progressing and the fee has been collected, and now what do I do? Am I working for free?
It's going to happen, and they'll be looking for the podcast with the answers.
I mean, just to have at least an idea. And there's probably other things that people might be able to do and that sort of thing on it, but I think going to hourly and possibly with a floor, where it's a minimum amount of, we're going into it, we're going to be billing you for 8 hours a month or whatever to maintain this. And again, in your mind, you might not say it this way, but in your mind, you're maintaining it because there has to be. Previously, there was no space in the resources to manage this project because it should have been finished by now. So now we're having to make space. That is going to cost us, money to do that, and you're helping share that burden in a sense. But whether you enact a floor or not, I guess could be debated because we're still debating it ourselves. But at any rate, tell me a little bit about how you work with designers outside of your area, because I've always advised people to go to a attorney that knows their state rules and laws, and all of that. But it sounds like you can work with people other places. So I'm just curious to know real quick what the deal is with that.
Okay, so basically, I work with clients across the country, and I don't go to court for them. I don't represent them in proceedings, and that's really number one where lawyers don't work across state lines if you have to go to court, because there's different ways to get admitted to courts and things like that. You can't just walk into any court in any state and practice. So I am licensed in New York, Connecticut, and Utah, and have clients in all those states, obviously. But basically, I'm more of a consultant in some ways, because I'm writing contracts, just like you'd buy a template from anyone, and you could buy a template from someone in Alaska and use it in Florida, right? I mean, it's a template.
I will tell you, I don't recommend that with people though, because I don't like this selling contract online business. I won't ever sell my contract. I really don't like it. I would rather people contact you or an attorney in their state or their favorite attorney or their construction. Everyone should have a construction attorney, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean,
that can go to court for you.
Yeah, the reason is that you don't want to be working to the contract. You want your contract to reflect how you work. And it's not as crazy expensive as people think. I know lawyers are scary, all of that. And we talked a little bit about how the lawyer should be working for you. So when you select your lawyer, you have to really interview that person too. And just don't stop till you find the right fit. But as far as me, again, I'm not going to court for people. I write into every single design contract that if there's a dispute, it should be resolved outside of court through arbitration. Mediation is a step before arbitration, but you want those disputes to be private. You don't want people to be able to search up your design business and see that you had to sue your client for collections. I mean, that's like a big, reputational harm. And a lot of the clients, I always joke that I could write a book about design clients, meaning your clients, because I feel like I understand the profile of the typical design client. It's different. These are people that have a lot of money and, they're paying a lot of money for a service. And I just find the same issues on repeat with different clients, my different clients, But yes, so I can work across state lines. I'm working on the contracts. If something comes up that I can't help with because it's so state specific, I refer to a local attorney. But basic things like I can look up Florida law and give you an idea of the things that are different from New York with regard to your specific contracts. And one last point I mentioned before is that contracts in general are the basic rules are all the same across the country. When you test for the bar exam, every state takes the same contracts test. And when you write a contract with your client, the law becomes that contract. That's the law between the two of you. And unless there's something really insane in it that kind of pulls it out, the courts or the arbitrator are looking to interpret the contract based on the intent of the words and the intent of the parties. So you're really talking about the world of the four corners of the document. So in that regard, find the right attorney who understands the industry, start there, and they will tell you if they can or cannot help you. Nobody wants to take on something they don't know. I mean,
right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So
and I love that. And that's all really good to know about the contract end and all of that, and being able to, be able to work with somebody that's not there. And it makes perfect sense because my copyright attorney is in Los Angeles, but that's his specialty. That's what he does. And he's written our contract for our program and because I've had numerous copyright issues over the last few years. And so he addresses all of that. So that's really good. Okay, let me get into our damn good truth for today. And thank you so much, Wendy, for being here. This is really super valuable information and a great discussion to start for any design firm to look at these things. Because again, I've been in business for a very long time and I have not really encountered this happening so much as in the last few years. So I cannot emphasize it enough. Your contract is one of the most fundamental tools of your business, and you must have a good one. I do not recommend purchasing generic online contracts, but rather talking to an attorney who specializes in this area, someone who really understands our design business, because I can guarantee you that if you have to go to court, a judge is not going to understand all the nuances of our business, right? And so super important. I won't ever sell our contract, ever. I've been asked a million times. I could have made a lot of money with it, but I won't do it because I don't think it's in the best interest of the designer to do so. I really do. I do agree with you, Wendy, that having some sort of contract, if you got it out of a Cracker Jack box, is probably better than not having any contract. So that's true. But if you want to play in the big leagues, you have to understand the rules of the game and make sure you are protecting your business interests. You really do. You have to up level to be a business owner first. You really, truly do. This is a big part of my messaging. So thank you, Wendy, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. You've been a delightful guest and giving of your valuable time. I know that time is valuable, and I appreciate it, and I think all of our listeners will appreciate it, and all of that. So, and thank you guys for being here. And Liz, who didn't get to say much, she's probably nursing the sweet little Josie, I think, probably right now. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Until next time, stay bold, stay inspired, and keep embracing your bag girl spirit. If you've enjoyed today's show, head over to join the community at damngooddesigner.com to continue the conversation and sign up for our newsletter.